So iron comparison video for you today. It's a new Ping i230 iron up against the Titleist T100. So we've got forged against non-forged, a little bit different to the look, very similar lofts, very much in that players category. We're going to take a look at both these irons, test them and provide you with some numbers. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into hitting some shots with the new Ping, the i230. So recently launched from Ping, and it's a great looking iron. You know, it's definitely a Ping iron, but more of a sexy Ping iron, if that makes sense. A little bit cleaner on the look, not maybe as chunky. The blade length is pretty generous, I would say, in this iron. Little bit of offset, bit of a medium-ish top line, satin finish, and a really nice sort of shape. So definitely, in terms of a Ping iron, a good looking iron. Not a bad opening shot. Really nice high ball flight, 33 degrees of loft on this 7 iron, so we're seeing that a bit more edging towards that traditional lofting as we would sort of expect. So you see the spin number there, 6,500. We're getting some good spin, plenty of height, some great land angle, and it's that control, which is what these clubs are really sort of trying to promote. That's a nice strike. Yeah, it's a ball flight that sort of gets up and sort of, like, not stalls, probably the wrong word, but it's up in the air and you can see it's just coming in with some spin, some land angle, some control. It's not like it's absolutely rocketing away, and you're probably not going to get like flyers with these types of irons. And again, if you're moving from that game improvement iron, this is the big difference you'll probably find. Game improvement iron, stronger lofts tend to be a little bit hotty. Sometimes you do get those flyers, those low spinners that just go another 10 yards, and you don't want that to happen. So this is where these types of irons will sort of be a little bit more consistent. Might not be as long hitting, and they probably won't be as long hitting with a loft, but you're going to gain some control. Okay, and that shot there was a bit off the toe of the club. That wasn't the perfect of strikes. You see that ball speed just dropping back a tiny bit, but the spin's still there, just dropping a tiny bit of distance there. But that's where I think these irons are nice progression, because you're going to get some forgiveness. You've still got some help in there in terms of that perimeter weight and distribution of weight. We've got tungsten in both these irons, which we'll talk a little bit about. So in the Ping, you see you can get it into that plug in the toe, and then you've got a little plug that goes inside the hosel when the shaft's fitted, so that's pulling that weight into the heel and the toe, helps with stability. Now the Ping iron isn't forged, so we've got that polymer insert in there, which I think does a fantastic job of controlling the sound, and sound we tend to relate to as feel. So even though this isn't a forged iron, it does have a feel of a forged. It's that muted, it's not clicky, it's not sort of loud on that sound as you're striking the golf ball. Ooh, it's a little bit pulley there. Lost my balance a touch on that one, but the flight's there nice and sort of high. And I think when you're moving in these types of irons, I think there's always going to be that influence of how the club looks. As I mentioned, if I pop these two irons side by side, I think this is where you may just be influenced a little bit with confidence down by that golf ball. Again, if you're moving from that game improvement iron, because the size of the heads between these two irons is considerably as a difference. You know, the blade length is much more squat in the Titleist. It's looks to be a much more shallower head, so it definitely looks smaller and it makes the ball look bigger. So you think, oh no, you know, and that might be a little bit more nervy looking as you look down, especially maybe as you move into those longer irons, whereas the Ping, definitely a little bit longer blade length, looks to be like as a bit more of a hitting surface, and that might just give you that little bit of extra confidence. Again, that's not a perfect strike, touch pulley, bit toey, but I'd be quite happy with that on the golf course, to be honest. You know, again, the control is there, the land angle looks very, very similar, and the distance control looks good, which is exactly what these irons are all about. So let's move into that T100 and see how that stacks up against the i230. Okay, so T100, a beautiful looking golf club. Again, very clean on the back. We know Titleist make some fantastic looking golf clubs, don't they? And as I say, when you put these two side by side on the back, we definitely see a noticeable smaller head, as we mentioned just earlier, with the T100 against the i230, and very similar in that playing position. Both really nice shapes, but just a thinner top line with the Titleist, shorter squat blade length. Again, a little bit more, or very similar sort of offset we're seeing, which is quite minimal. So again, it's that influence of how does that look a bit scary down by that golf ball? Do you like a smaller head? Does that make you focus a little bit more? I think that was always sometimes a bit of an argument with a lot of golfers. They'll say that small head, sometimes even blades, it makes you focus, it makes you really concentrate on hitting the middle of the golf club. Potentially is a bit of an argument there. Very similar sort of makeup in this T100. It's 34 degrees, so it's 1 degree weaker than the i230. Obviously, loft can be changed through a custom fit. And of course, you've always got the T100S as a model option, which is 2 degrees stronger. So that will come in at 32 degrees. Exactly the same technology in the head, shape, look and everything. It's just literally 2 degrees stronger. And that does feel superb. And we are seeing a forged head, obviously with the T100, and that just comes through for me. You can just feel that. It just feels like the balls on that club face that fraction long. It just feels like it sticks to the club head a little bit more, just a tiny bit more muted. And it just, for me, gives a little bit of an edge over that forged against the non-forged. As much as the Ping does a great job of controlling that sound with that polymer insert, I just don't think it substitutes hit in a forged club. Feel fantastic, big difference on the feel. Now, forgiveness wise, you know, you might look at this small head again and what we just mentioned about being a little bit scary down by that golf ball, but there is a little bit of help inside this T100 head. We've got some tungsten deep inside there, which is split, and that's obviously going to help again with creating a little bit of stability on those slight miss hits. So there is some help in there, even though it looks incredibly compact in relation to the i230. Ooh, right, that's got to test a little bit of that forgiveness. That's a touch in the heel. Didn't feel as good off the club face there. Got that instant feedback into that ball speed, just dropping a tiny bit. Distance is probably just gonna, yeah, just dropped a little bit. But the spin's still there, land angle's still there, just dropping that little bit of distance, a slight miss hit. So the other thing to maybe look at as well is the sole, and that's quite a bit different between these two irons, with the Ping being a little bit wider in the sole and the Titleist being a little bit more sort of sleek and a little bit more compact. So I think really between these two irons, it's going to be a little bit down to probably personal preference of the looks, and then also a little bit of that feel as well. You know, the difference between that forged and non-forged, the small head and the slightly larger head. So your preference may be come down to a little bit of the looks between these two irons. You know, the small head against the slightly large head of the Ping, the forged against the non-forged. Gorgeous feel, just a touch up that left hand side, but a beautiful contact, beautiful feel off that club face. A cracker to finish off with. Don't want that one back, that felt superb. Okay, let's quickly look at some numbers between the i230 in the Ping against the Titleist T100. Okay, so quick look at the dispersion rings to kick things off. So we've got the Ping in the white and the orange is the T100. So sort of similar pattern, maybe a little bit tighter front to back with the T100 in relation to the Ping, front to back dispersion. Left to right, pretty similar between those two clubs. And then when we look at the numbers there, we can see the Ping on the bottom, club head speed, just short of that 90, typical for me with the 7 iron, same with the Titleist. A little bit more ball speed with the Ping, probably that little bit 1 degree extra or stronger on the loft, should I say, will create a little bit more ball speed. We can probably just see that, and the average is 120 against that 118.5. Launch, very, very similar. Spin, very similar as well, with actually the Ping giving us a little bit more spin than the Titleist. Maybe you expect to see that. We've just had a little slight low spinner there. That might be a little bit that strike, as that ball speed's dropped. Probably a little bit more of my contact there. Might be the one I just turned over a touch left, which will obviously drop my spin a tiny bit. So very similar, to be fair, between those two, and you can see distance numbers very, very similar. Not long hitting for me, but it's that higher loft. You know, it's not distance I'm sort of looking for, or maybe you, as you go into this type of iron, isn't looking for pure distance, but you're looking for this spin number, this control, this height you see, this land angle. That's what's going to give you that control as the ball comes into land. So post comments down below, which one would you go for and why? I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. Appreciate you watching the video, and hopefully I'll catch up with you all very soon.